So today my presentation will be on the art of photography. This will involve the settings used, the types of cameras that photographers use, and all the work that gets put into taking a single picture. So here's the general outline of this presentation. We will talk about settings like exposure, shutter speed, and focus, as well as the types of cameras and the work that gets put into photography. So the first setting is exposure. In short, it is basically just the amount of light that your camera is letting into the sensor. In this example, I used a photo that I took a while back and I slightly changed the exposure to show how big of a difference it can make even by moving it by such a little amount. Here's another example of a photo that is heavily underexposed. And at this point, no amount of editing can save this picture. It is just forever horrible. Which brings me to my next topic, which is shutter speed. Shutter speed is just the length of time that your camera's shutter is open. And here's an example of that in slow motion. To the human eye, this difference is literally impossible to see. However, you can see that in slow motion, it is such a big difference that it can literally make or break your shot. And here's an example of that. If you take a look at this photo, it was taken at 1/500th of a second. You can see there is almost no motion blur in this picture, but this picture was taken at 1/400th of a second. And you can clearly see that there is some noticeable motion blur, which just ruins this picture. For example, if you have a low shutter speed, such as like 10 seconds, in a very high exposure, it can lead to a picture looking like this. So what exactly is going on in this picture? So this picture was taken with a 6-second shutter speed, which means that the sensor was exposed for a total of 6 seconds, and the exposure was also set very high. If you combine these two settings together, you will end up with an incredibly bright picture with almost no detail left in it, and some incredibly obvious motion blur. So here is another example of what shutter speed is capable of. So this picture is a bit more stable than the other one, however you can still see that the background is very blurry, and that is because this was taken without a tripod and I was holding it with my hands. So this picture had a shutter speed of 20 seconds, and you can see almost everything else is blurry except for these sparkler trails, and that leads me directly into the next topic, which is focus. So focus is a pretty self-explanatory setting. Any object in the picture that is sharp is said to be in focus, and on the contrary, everything that is blurred is said to be out of focus. So here is a really good example. When I took this picture, I was going for trying to make half of the picture in focus and half of it out of focus, which I think I did pretty well. If you look more towards the right, you can see the sharp part of the image, which would be in focus. And if you look towards the left, everything is blurry, so that means it would be out of focus. So now on to the types of cameras that photographers use. The two main ones that I use today are mirrored and mirrorless. Here's a diagram of the difference between a mirrored and a mirrorless camera. On the left, you can see that the mirrored camera has two main mirrors. And if you look on the right, you can see that there is no mirror present in that camera. So other than two mirrors missing, what exactly is the difference between these two cameras? Well, for the mirrored camera, there are things such as like better battery life, a larger lens selection, and faster autofocus, which is actually getting narrowed down because of the advancements of technology in the mirrorless cameras. So for a mirrorless camera, they are generally a lot smaller and easier to carry around, and you are able to turn it on and take a picture in much less time than with a mirrored camera. And it also does not have mirrors that will wear out over time. Although yes, they are still expensive, most full-time photographers do use a mirrorless camera as they have clear benefits and are quickly taking over the mirrored cameras. Mirrored cameras are still good, however mirrorless cameras are very quickly taking over the mirrored cameras. So as you can probably see, there's a lot of work and thought that goes into taking a picture. At least for photographers, if you just take a picture with your phone, there are so many things in the software level of the camera that is happening that you don't even know. But sometimes taking a perfect picture is just incredibly hard and takes even more work than what has already been put into it. And that is where I'm going to use this video by Peter McKinnon called the bucket shot. In this video, he goes on to explain how difficult it actually is to get this picture that he took. He also explains why it's so hard, and he does have evidence to show that it is such a hard thing to do, and not everyone will go through the effort to take a photo like this, but here's that clip.
I've wanted the shot of Moraine Lake completely covered in snow, but the water's still being liquid. That is a dream shot of mine. Have you ever seen it like that?
No, I haven't.
And how long have you lived here?
I moved here 2012.
And you haven't seen it like that?
So we checked into Lake Louise. They gave us a beautiful room overlooking the lake. Opened the blinds. Completely covered in fog.
Insane. I've never seen it like this.
The sun was starting to set. It was starting to look exactly how I wanted it to look, minus the fog. I went back up the mountain by myself, and I got lucky where no one was at the top. It was a quick break in the fog. It was perfectly still, perfectly quiet. I snapped the frame, and I nailed it. It was perfect. Everything was how it should be. Everything sounded perfect. It looked perfect. It felt perfect. The weather, it was the bucket shot.
Now obviously not every picture is going to have this amount of work put into it. However, it does go to show the lengths that people go to take just one simple photo. I would recommend watching the full video if you want to hear his full story, as I was not able to put it all in there. But yeah, that's my presentation, and here's my works cited, I guess.